period of U.S. history is the reason that we assume someone is innocent until proven guilty today.
I don't know.
Are you sure?
I have no clue.
This could be you. Confused, disappointed, and without $1 million. Why? All because of your lack of knowledge of U.S. history, specifically the Salem Witch Trials. Hi, I'm Madelyn Tresky, and I'd like to explain the Salem Witch Trials in its entirety, along with my dear friend Cadence Metz.
Oh,
It's actually the Salem Witch Trials. How do you feel about this?
I had no clue. I just thought that was when people were stoned for practicing witchcraft.
There's actually a lot more to it.
What? Tell me more.
So how much do you know about the trials?
I don't know anything about them, but I don't know where we should start.
I think we should start at the beginning, because then we have some context.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So before the trials even began, there were actually 2 Salems in Massachusetts Bay Colony. Did you know that?
No, I didn't.
There was Salem Village and Salem Town. Salem Village was the smaller of the 2, and it consisted of mostly farming communities. This is where the trials really took place.
Oh.
In Salem Village, there were 2 very prominent families, the Porters and the Putnams, and you were basically either pro-Porter or pro-Putnam, so Salem Village was pretty divided.
That sounds a lot like how it is today.
It really does. In 1689, Samuel Parris became pastor of Salem Village's Congregational Church.
Oh, how did people feel about him?
Well, you either really liked him or you really didn't like him, because he could actually be pretty nasty and pretty obnoxious. So this really just divided Salem Village even more. So you were either pro-Parris or anti-Parris.
Oh.
This made Salem Village a lot more vulnerable to be overcome by something. And we can see this in a lot of other historical events.
Yeah, I've heard of that before.
A community of people is divided, it makes them a lot more it makes it a lot easier to overpower them.
That makes sense.
They were divided because of Reverend Parris, and the thing that overcame them was fear. They feared the devil and they feared witchcraft.
Oh, so is that how the trials started?
Not really, something else happened.
So what caused the trials?
Well, in 1692, Reverend Parris's daughter, her name was Betty, she fell ill. Her symptoms included dashing about, speaking nonsense, diving under furniture, and feeling like something's crawling beneath her skin.
What caused that?
Well, it could have been the result of a lot of things other than witchcraft, like child abuse, epilepsy, delusional psychosis, guilt, boredom, and ergot.
What's ergot?
It's when moldy grains of wheat are turned into loaves of bread, and then when you eat that bread, you get a bunch of crazy symptoms like hallucinations and feeling like something's crawling beneath your skin.
That sounds pretty weird.
Soon after she fell ill, 2 other girls fell ill also, including experiencing similar symptoms. Her cousin, Abigail Williams, and their friend, Ann Putnam.
Oh. So what happened next?
Well, after being bombarded with questions, as you can expect, the 3 girls gave 3 names as to who was causing their fits. Tituba, Sarah Good, and Sarah Osborne.
Who were they?
Sarah Good and Sarah Osborne were 2 low-life members of the community who weren't really popular, and it was easy to believe they were witches because they rarely attended church. They never went.
That makes sense.
And Tituba, as we know, was Reverend Parris's slave, and she often told the girls stories of her native folklore, and that included stories of voodoo and omens, so that was probably a big inspiration for the girls.
Oh yeah.
The Putnams brought the situation to the attention of John Hawthorne and Jonathan Corwin, who were 2 magistrates from Salem Town. And then on May 1st, a public trial was held, and other members of the community came forward and reported dairy products going bad and animals being born with disformities after being visited by one of the 3 women.
That's really weird.
It also became apparent that the magistrates believed the women were guilty when they were questioning them.
Why?
Well, it was their style of questioning. It was less so asking if they committed the crime and more so asking why they committed the crime.
That's kind of dumb. What is that?
Just ignore her. Eventually, Tituba told them what they wanted to hear and said that a man approached her one night from Boston and asked her to sign her name in his book.
Who was it?
It was presumably the devil. And in his book were the names of Good and Osborne and a bunch of others that she couldn't read. So this really just escalated the situation because it confirmed everyone's worst fear, that there were more witches in Salem. So this is what prompted the trials to go further.
So what happened after that?
Well, this is when the trials really get serious, and this is when they formally begin. In late May of 1692, the governor of Massachusetts Bay Colony established the official court of Oyer and Terminer. And in the court, there were 7 judges, and it was presided over by William Stoughton, who was the Lieutenant Governor of Massachusetts Bay Colony. Then, so the accused had to defend themselves in court without aid of counsel, so they had no lawyer like we do today. It's just like provided. And the prosecutors had the option to provide spectral evidence.
What's spectral evidence?
It's when, if they reacted when in the presence of the accused, then the accused was seen as guilty. So if they started writhing or babbling, then it would count as evidence, and it would basically prove that the accused was guilty.
Oh.
So it'd be really easy to fake that someone was a witch.
That's true.
Another really big contributor to the trials is the fact that the accused didn't receive any punishment from the court under the Puritan belief that they had received their punishment from God.
That doesn't make much sense.
It doesn't really, and this would obviously increase the amount of confessions made because they wouldn't be punished for it.
Exactly.
Bridget Bishop was the first person to be executed for practicing witchcraft. She was hanged on June 10th on Gallows Hill in Salem Village. Then 9 days later, 4 other women were hanged again. Then one man by the name of George Burroughs was brought from his home in Maine to be accused of being a ringleader of witches, and he was a former pastor of Salem Village. He was hanged on August 19th with 4 other people, despite being able to perfectly recite the Lord's Prayer, which was something they thought witches were incapable of doing.
That's weird.
Then on September 22nd, 4 more people were hanged, and these were really the last people that were hanged, as the trials was coming to an end at this point. Another woman named Rebecca Nurse was also accused, but she wasn't accused until later in the trials because she was quite wealthy and prominent, so it'd be hard to believe that someone as popular as her was a witch back in the early stages.
Oh, that's interesting.
It's really interesting, actually. And using this information, we can infer that a lot of the later accusations were probably just to get back at someone and to just get rid of them.
That's really dumb. So what happened after that?
Well, like I said, the trials are starting to die down now, and Governor Phipps removed the use of the Court of Oyer and Terminer, and he replaced it with the Superior Court of Judicature. And of the 56 people accused in this court, only 3 were convicted, and they were all pardoned by Governor Phipps.
That's good.
It's really good to hear. So, all in all, 25 people were killed because of the trials. 19 were hanged, 5 died in custody, and one man, whose name was Giles Corey, was pressed beneath 2 stones until he died.
That's violent.
It's very violent.
So, does any of this affect us today?
It affects us today in several ways. The Salem Witch trials impacted the separation of church and state because people were executed for practicing witchcraft or worshiping the devil, which is a Christian concept, and not everyone in the U.S. is Christian.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
And like we said earlier, innocent until proven guilty was because of the trials, because in Salem, if you were accused of being a witch, you were basically guilty, and everyone thought you were a witch.
Yeah, that's interesting.
And the people in the trials had no aid of counsel, so they basically had no way to defend themselves other than their word. So that would obviously make the trials really unfair and not realistic. So that's why we have it today.
Yeah, they seem to have affected us a lot.
They did, and they're not taught about it in schools a lot. I barely learned about it. Did you?
No. Thanks for watching. Hope you learned something.